Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs. My guest today has his finger on the pulse of the city of Barrie and the housing market, a huge heart, and an eye for photography. Let's get to know Scott Cooper. So I'm sitting in Painters Hall Bistro in beautiful downtown Barrie with my amazing guest, Scott Cooper. Scott, welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs.
Thanks for having me, Kev.
Well, I know that you've been a super busy guy. You've got a lot of things on your plate right now. There isn't too much in town that you're not involved with community-wise through Rotary and other projects. But before I unpack all that, I want to get to know you a little bit first. So, Scott, tell me a bit about where you grew up and where you're from.
Kev, I was born in Newmarket. Moved to Bradford when I was in grade 5 and kind of grew up in Bradford on the marsh. Working in the marsh in the summertime, packing lettuce, combining carrots, weeding onions.
Oh, wow.
And then when I was done high school, there's no jobs in Bradford, so it was either go to the city or come up to Barrie, and kind of followed my older brother to Barrie, and I was working in the car business.
Nice. So around what age was that when you came to Barrie?
I would have been
Roughly.
Probably 21, 22.
Okay. And so you got into the car business?
Yeah.
Oh, whereabouts was that?
I was working at for Barrie Fine Cars.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was working in the parts department for the Subaru division at Barrie Fine Cars.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so now you've got your dad's up here, and you've had family up here.
Yeah, and then when my dad retired, my folks moved up this way, and we've been here since.
Nice.
Yeah.
So at some point, you decided that you wanted to get into real estate.
Yes.
Right? And because that is a lot of what you do, and you're sort of very involved in real estate, you definitely do things in a very different dynamic than most people. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you especially. But tell me a bit about what got you into real estate. What was that for?
Yeah, so I was working in the car business. I was a service advisor. I worked for a great dealership here in town, Jackson's Toyota. And what I found was I couldn't really go anywhere. I could either go into management if a position came up, or I could go into car sales. And I wanted more. I wanted more income, I wanted more experiences, and I wanted to grow my own personal development as a salesperson. And I was on my way up north to Sudbury with a girlfriend at the time, and I saw this big RE/MAX billboard in Muskoka, and I thought, hey, I wonder, what does it take to become a real estate agent?
Yeah.
Do you have to go to school? Is it a university degree, college degree? What does it take? And so when I got back from that weekend, I looked into it, and I realized I could do it. I could do the education while I was still working.
Yeah.
As you know, it doesn't take very much to get into the business.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to stay in the business.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I made the transition. It took me about a year and a half to put it together.
Well, when you take a look around the city of Barrie, real estate has grown so much, and real estate agents, it used to be such a smaller sort of group in a very niche little market. Now you can't, hate to say it, throw a rock without hitting a real estate agent in Barrie. They're everywhere. But somewhere there's a pretty big ballpark percentage of how many agents there are per capita, and Barrie's pretty high on that, isn't it?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of real estate agents here. With the boom of the real estate market, real estate agents and mortgage brokers were coming out of the woodwork. It was the business that everybody wanted to get into. Everybody can get in. The cost to get in is really low.
Yeah.
Everyone's driving around in fancy cars.
Yeah.
and so everybody wanted to be a realtor or a mortgage broker for a period of time there, and they didn't realize that it's like any business, you have to put a lot of work behind it to actually make a living out of it.
Well, a mutual friend, Mr. Leclerc, he was one of the first guys I ever spoke to realistically about real estate. And the amount of money that he said that he put into the advertising aspect of it and the marketing aspect was 70% minimum to promote yourself and your business. Do you find that you have to do sort of the same thing? Is it still like that?
So the advertising and the marketing as a real estate agent has changed drastically with the advent of the internet and the way that social media and all that stuff has kind of come into play. We used to spend a lot of money in print ads. I'd spend $700 a week on print ads with the Barrie Advance, and I would get leads. People would pick up the paper on Thursday, be like, "Ooh, I like this house," and they would call me, and then I would hopefully sell my client's home, or I'd help them buy another property. Right in around 2007, 2008. Those leads stopped making the phone calls, and everybody went to the internet. And by the time you found it in the newspaper, we'd already sold it on the internet.
Yeah, it's a lot different than fridge magnets and pens anymore.
For sure.
Here's some stationery. And one of the things that really drew me to the way you do things was you were the first person I saw, well, not even just in this community, but anywhere, that didn't have your face on your signs. Your lawn signs had a picture of the inside of the house, which was fairly genius. because realistically, people want to see what the inside of the house looks like. They don't always want to have to log on right away. But tell me a bit about where that inspiration came from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a creative person, and I looked at things and I thought, people are driving by this for sale sign all the time, and they don't really care about the pretty agent's face on the sign. The sign's designed to tell people the house is for sale. But what if it could do more? What more could we do with a for sale sign? You know, could we attract people to take a closer look at it if there was a beautiful photo of on the sign of the interior of the home? What if it said something catchy instead of the brokerage's name and the agent's face? What if it said something like, "We love this home and you will too"?
Yeah.
So we came up with some creative ways to make for sale signs sort of stick out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's been fun doing that.
Well, I see all these posters and billboards of people holding these little, little crystal or little glass signs or little trophies and stuff that say #1 agent in North America and all these other things. And there's a certain honesty in advertising that you would hope people would be, extremely honest. But to think that somebody's actually, the #1 agent in Canada, here in Barrie or in Newmarket or wherever else, do you find that there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily completely telling the truth in their advertising?
No, we're bound by an organization called the Real Estate Council of Ontario.
Yeah.
And if your advertising is misleading or incorrect, someone's going to tell on you, and you're going to get fined. And it's an ugly way to go.
Yeah.
But it can be a little misleading to people locally because they think, how could this person be #1 in the country with a big market like Toronto and Vancouver?
Yeah.
But really, we have a couple of teams here in Barrie that have built a massive business and do a huge volume of sales.
Yeah.
Barrie, Innisfil, Springwater, Oro, Essa, a little bit of Oro, Aurelia.
Yeah.
And they've built a huge business, and they are winning awards nationally. But does the award really mean anything to the person selling their home? And that's kind of where, I've always had a disconnect with that. When I've been at companies and I've won awards, the awards don't really mean much to me. What really means something to me is like, did I have a happy customer? Was I able to go above and beyond and blow someone's mind by providing a service or an experience for them? And to me, that's the reward. Those are the rewards I'm looking for.
Sure. Yeah. And so it's not always about being the great big agency in town or the big agency in the country. Sometimes it's about that personal attention and the attention to detail of knowing people's wants and needs, right?
Yeah. For me, I compete against myself. Yeah. How do I get better every time? How do I compete so that tomorrow I'm a better version of what I was today? I'm really not competing against the other agents in town. Yeah, we go up against each other to get business. I just see that as an opportunity for me to come better next time so that the person chooses me over them.
And that's a great mantra. It really is. So when you take a look at the other agents in town, you take a look at the way you're doing things, you've recently made some new changes too to the way you're doing things and to your team. So.
Yeah, and we're always trying to make it focused on what's in it for the customer. And our whole model is fall in love with the customer, not your brand or service.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people forget. And it's easy to get a bit of an ego going. You're selling lots of homes. You're doing a great job. Your branding and marketing looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And you need those things, but really you have to remember at the end of the day, those people feed, house, and clothe you. Mm-hmm. And if you don't treat them like they feed, house, and clothe you, you're going to be out of business.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize how much time you have to put in as an agent because you've got to be available Saturdays. You've got to be available on those odd times because when an offer comes in, you can't say, oh, you know what, I'll get to it tomorrow, because you just don't have that kind of turnaround. You have to respond.
You do, absolutely, right? Yeah. And it's the long weekends and it's the holidays and the stuff that's going on. So we're kind of on call 24/7.
Sure.
But you know what, we really don't have a tough job in that sense. We have a lot of flexibility in our hours. I mean, we're not punching the clock 9 to 5. We have a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of days where we don't start work till noon or 2 in the afternoon that day because there wasn't a lot on our schedule, and we took that for our own personal time. Yeah. So I won't complain and say, oh, we have it so bad we have to work every weekend and holidays. It's really not like that. And I look at it like it's not work. This is an opportunity for me to go and do something that I'm completely stoked and passionate about. So,
yeah. And your wife, Kat, is a good support, part of the support network too that you've got. You've got to have that sort of, reliable friend / wife / somebody who, believes in you and is going to, pull up their end of things too and believe in you.
Absolutely, right? And having a partner that's understanding when you're going out at 9:30 at night. It's tough when you have kids. Luckily, we don't have children, so we kind of luck out there. But you'll notice a lot of couples will get together and become a real estate team because that way they can, have their family life and work together.
And they can kind of hand the baton to each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you've got this new company, right? You've started up this new group of associates of yours with your new agency. Can you tell me a bit about that and how that got inspired?
Yeah, so what I found was, everybody wants to see a house on Thursday at 4 o'clock, and at a certain point, once you're busy, you can't be there for everybody.
Sure.
And so you need to start adding people to your team to work with you that have the same heart and the same mindset, because you don't want to break culture and you don't want to break the service that you're giving to your clients.
Yeah.
So I started by adding a couple of people to the team to help me with the volume of business, that had the same mindset and the same heart as I did. And once we got to a certain level, I decided I want to name my team something else other than the Scott Cooper team. I wanted to name it something where people in the team could have their own identity and their own business and their own brand in the team.
Yeah.
So I named it the One Group.
Nice.
And we grew it to a certain number. We're at 6 people right now. We don't want to grow it to 500 people, and
Sure.
we're not about selling 1,000 houses a year. It's about doing a smaller amount of business and a really good job for people. And we decided to join forces with Forest Hill Real Estate.
Yeah.
And Forest Hill has been around since 1985
Yep, I know
in
who they are.
Toronto. And they're kind of synonymous with luxury real estate, but not
course.
necessarily in this area. Luxury service for everybody. And they opened up in Aurelia initially. And the guy from Aurelia, he was courting me, calling me every Friday at 10 a.m., trying to get me to come and join the company. And
Yeah.
finally I decided, I caved in, I had coffee with him.
Sure.
And it made a lot of sense to me to move our team over there because we were looking for that boutique feel. We didn't want to be at a company with a sea of agents. We wanted a family environment. In fact, we had a team meeting this morning, and other companies I've been at, when we have a team meeting, as soon as it's over, everybody scatters, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's hanging around after the meeting today. They're chatting about their kids. They're talking about what's
Camaraderie,
going on.
yeah.
We're creating a culture there, and I really
Nice.
like that.
That's it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I've noticed about what you do is you definitely pay attention to the trends. So what do you notice? And I know a lot of real estate agents get asked this question, and so do mortgage brokers, and everybody just sort of expects, you almost expect the political, everything's all awesome, kind of happy, shiny answer.
Right.
But in all honesty, how do you see the market trends right now, and how is the market going?
Yeah, everything is not awesome. In fact, it's a challenging time. In fact, I would say 2018 has probably been my hardest year in business since I've been in it since 2005. And what it is it's the old adage of supply and demand. We had a boom here in the market where we had very little supply and we had huge demand. About 230 homes would come for sale every single month, and 230 of them will get bought.
Yeah.
In most cases, bidding wars, prices going up over asking price. In June of 2017, the inventory spiked to over 600 listings and only 89 sales.
Oh no.
And that's when the market started to change. So we had seen about a 30% increase in sales and in prices in 1 year, and we've seen about a 35 to 40% decrease over the last 18 months, bringing us back down to reality. Now what's happening is we're just not having the volume of sales that we're used to.
And sales are different now for you too, because I'm sure you're noticing the trends that, people always have all these terrible things to say about millennials, which is kind of funny because the millennials are definitely a big part of our future right now. They're controlling, marriage, they're controlling, increase in population, all kinds of things, but they're also really affecting the housing market because they're saying how many people are they might be working in Toronto, but they're not tempted to buy in Toronto because of the price. And so they're buying outside of the city, and now they're buying in Barrie and other little suburban areas because they want to get more value and more home.
Definitely. We've noticed too, there's still some bidding wars going on in our market in certain price points and in certain style of homes,
Yeah.
as well as Aurelia and Midland. They're on fire in a couple of different areas. They don't have as much supply. But what I'm noticing about the new generation of buyers and sellers that are coming up is they communicate differently than others,
Yeah.
right? They communicate in a totally different way.
And they shop in a different way.
They shop in a different way. They want to get all their information and everything, and then only when they're really ready to do something will they reach out to make human interaction. So our industry is changing in that sense. And one of the things that's driving the future of real estate business is what we call big data
Yeah.
and artificial intelligence. Tech companies are coming into the industry and they're collecting data on what's happening with home sales, and they're using artificial intelligence to communicate to the new buyer. They call it the iBuyer.
Yeah.
And it's replacing a lot of the roles of the real estate agent.
Well, tracking algorithms and having all these ways of, collecting new data is amazing, because if you look at the way our parents might have bought a house over 40 years ago, they were paying over 10 and 15% interest on their mortgage, and sure, their house was only $20,000 or $40,000 back then, but people go crazy now when your interest rate goes up a half a point or a point.
Historically, they're super low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you find is drawing the people out to you right now, then what do you think your biggest attraction is?
So my biggest value proposition is going to be my ability to be in relationship with my buyer and seller.
Sure.
You know, when it really counts and they need to know for certain that it's going to come together,
Yeah.
they're going to call me and we're going to do business together because they know I'm going to get it done.
Cool.
What we're noticing in the industry, though, is a trend towards more of a transactional type of business.
Sure.
With this iBuyer and with this artificial intelligence and big data, there's companies emerging out of the U.S. There's a company called Open Door,
Okay.
and they're changing the way the industry is working, as well as a huge company that just came into Canada called Zillow.
Yeah.
What's happening with Open Door and Zillow is you can go on Open Door or Zillow on the internet, and you can put in your address, and they'll make you an offer on your house right on the spot. Now they're going to buy it for less than you want to sell it for,
Sure.
but there'll be no conditions, and they'll buy your house. They'll then put your house back onto their website and sell it to somebody else. Or you can go on there, and if you see a property you like, you can trade your house for the other house. So this is a new, millennial.
It's like lease busters.
Yeah, it's a more tech way of doing real estate, and I think it's going to work for a certain segment of the market.
Yeah.
But just like the travel agent kind of got disrupted, a good travel agent that really takes care of their clients and that really adds value to the situation is still in business, and I think that it's going to thin out the herd of real estate agents.
Well, no matter how far technology goes, there's still that face that a lot of people still feel comfort in. It's like people going to grocery stores, people still want to, grab the vegetables and see what they're getting, and they want to be able to sometimes just have that look of trust and comfort, right?
Definitely.
So one of the things I also notice about you around town is you have this incredible ability to give back, but you're so humble about it. And I love that you give back in the ways that you do. So I know that you've got some incredible hobbies and some things that have really taken off for you, like Focus on Simcoe, and I'm about to get to that. But you're heavily involved in Rotary, and you did some stuff not long ago with some backpacks for homeless people. Can you tell me a bit about some of your involvement around town? Because I'm fascinated by it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I get excited because I'm a creative person.
And I know you're not telling people about it without being asked, so that's why I'm asking you, because I know that you're so quiet and shy about it usually, but tell me about it.
Yeah, I'm creative, right? So I like to come up with creative ways to try to, help people who need help, services and stuff like that. So I got inspired by a blog that I'd read about a young girl in the U.S. that went to her mom and said, "Hey, mommy, what if we stuff this backpack with a bunch of stuff and we give it to that person that's always on the corner over there?
Yeah.
Sleeping on the street." And I thought that was a really great idea, and I thought, well, we could do something like that here. So I got together, we put together a little committee of people, we named it Packs for the Homeless.
Nice.
And we went out and in a 2-month period, we had made 500 backpacks full of toiletries, personal products, hygiene, that kind of stuff, right? And we were delivering it. So rather than running out and just delivering it to people on the street, we went to the shelters. So we went to the Busby Center, we went to the Salvation Army, we went to the Liz Fry Society, the Youth Haven, went to those organizations and said, "Could you use these things?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, we could totally use that stuff."
Yeah.
So it worked really well.
Very cool, because and this has only happened in the last few days, and I saw this on social media and it blew my mind. And I don't even know if you've seen this yet, but Amazon can deliver to any place, even without an actual physical address. So there was a guy down in the States, and he saw this homeless guy sitting on the street, and he walked up to him and he said, "Is there anything I can get you?" And the guy was barefoot in January, and he was freezing. And he said, "I'd really love some socks." And he goes, "What size shoes do you wear too?" And he said, "Oh, 9.5. And Amazon, because he had Amazon Now on his phone, he ordered socks and shoes for this guy on Amazon, and you could put in the notes, "Delivered to Bob," sitting in front of this record store, or whatever it was. And Amazon showed up, and the guy recorded it from down the street, and Amazon showed up and delivered it, and all of a sudden this thing went viral, and it's this incredible trend. So being able to do what you do, especially on a creative aspect, I'm sure you're embracing some of this social media aspect of giving too, right? So one of the things that I noticed you do, and I knew you were kind of messing around with it and just sort of, seeing where it was going many years ago, and that's your photography. And it wasn't until I really followed you more on social media and saw some of the things you were doing with the camera, just mind-blowing stuff. And there's already a great network of photographers like Nat Caron and people like that around Barrie, but you have this whole different world that you see. So where did your inspiration come for your photography? Because I know that's one of your main things when you're on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really realize that I was a photographer until I'd say like right around 2007, 2008. I was listing homes for sale, and my photos weren't good. They were dark, and just like a lot of agents, years ago, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
You can hire people now and get really good photos, but back then there was really not great photos. So I sold a home, and I took my paycheck, and I walked into Henry's, and I said, I need a camera that will help. I need a camera that will take beautiful photos.
And they go cha-ching.
Little do they know that it's not the camera that takes the photos, it's the person behind there that really makes the photos. But so I bought an expensive camera and wide angle lens, and I went out and I started taking bad photos.
What was your first camera? Your first
It was a
camera?
Canon.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, so a Canon wide angle lens. And so I started taking real estate photos, and I started to learn. I did a lot of self-teaching. I did a 4-hour course with a guy named Mike Gibo. He's a local photographer. He's been around for a while. He's
Talented. He teaches a lot of great classes, yeah.
He's got a master's in photographic arts.
Brilliant.
So I learned the basics, exposure triangle. I got all that stuff out of Mike. And then I started to teach myself in YouTube videos and a lot of practice. Try this, didn't work. Try this, didn't work. So my real estate photos got better. And I wanted my photos to be a little more emotional, because people buy emotionally and they back it up with logic. So if I'm going to emotionally get them to get out of their house and come look at the house I'm selling, it needs to have some feeling to it. And then I started to take pictures. Then I'd go on a trip and I'd take my camera with me and I'd shoot beautiful landscapes and sunsets. And I'm like, I kind of got an eye for this.
Yeah.
Then I started to see photos everywhere. I'm driving in my car. I'm like, there's a photo, there's a photo, there's a photo. I'm sitting having dinner. I'm chatting with you right now, and I'm looking over there, and I'm like, you know what? There's a photo. So that's kind of where it started.
It goes with just having the eye, too, right? But you know what? People years ago, they all started getting these digital cameras, and then all of a sudden people wanted to be wedding photographers, which was really funny because it went from like digital cameras to, wow, I didn't know we had this many wedding photographers in Barrie. But then there's the good wedding photographers, and there's the people who are still doing what they've been doing for a long time. Whether it's headshots, whether it's landscape, there's people who've really embraced it, and you've done such a good job. So one of the reasons we're sitting in Painters Hall is why?
Yeah, so for me, photography has always been a hobby. It hasn't been a career. And I'm kind of glad, because it's allowed me to be creative and not rely on getting paid.
You're not pressured.
Pressured to do it, right? So I got approached by Nat Caron, a gentleman named Rick Bell, who's a very decorated commercial photographer in Canada, Toronto. Another gentleman named Alan Rothwell, who was an executive at HP, large format printing. The four of us got together, we put together a board, and we decided we were going to launch Barrie's first and only photography festival called Focus on Simcoe. Wow. And it runs for the whole month of June every single year. And we started, this year was our first year.
Nice.
And it's modeled off of one in Toronto called Contact, and there's another one over in Peterborough called Spark. And so we're going to grow this thing so that it's Simcoe-wide, not focus on Barrie, but focus on Simcoe.
Yeah.
And what we're looking for is exhibitors that are going to exhibit their work through the month of June. We do a big festival every single year. So I decided, since I was on the board, you know what, I'm going to try and do my first exhibit.
Sure.
It was a learning experience for sure, and I really enjoyed it. But I was thinking, if I was going to exhibit, where would I want to exhibit? And absolutely, one of my favorite places in town to go for dinner or just drinks or a meeting is the Painters Hall Bistro. I love this place. I looked at the walls and I thought, I really want to have my photography on the walls.
Well,
of
the
Painters
exposed
Hall
brick
Bistro.
and some of the atmosphere in here is perfect for just having that kind of a, presentation.
Definitely, yeah. And so I had a gallery opening night. I think it was June 7th or 8th last year.
Yeah.
And we had a party. I had the red carpet. I had the photo wall outside. We were doing Polaroids of people. We had past hors d'oeuvres and cheese boards, and everybody came and got to have a look at my photography. And we shot a little film of it and stuff, and it was a big thing for me. And I was nervous, and it was a lot behind it. Yeah. And Shane and Aaron from the Painters Hall have been great. They allowed me to keep my photography on the walls here, and you can still come in and see it. And I encourage people to come have a look, have a glass of wine, browse, have a look at the photography. Yeah.
Well, and you're a foodie, and I know that because I've seen your other, Facebook posts and other things, and we've also had meals together, and I know that you don't just eat like a burger and fries. You're going to have something fantastic, right? And you're always pairing. And one of the things I like about your photography is you've got, none of it's of like, the Instagram photos of here's what I'm eating. This is reality. Right, and some of these photos are going to come up, throughout this interview. And some of these the photography in here, it's so good that when somebody gets mesmerized into that photo. Like you look at some of the old Leibovitz pictures and stuff like that. And one of my favorite pictures of all time was actually of Pele's feet. But if you ever saw Pele's feet, they're all mangled up and kind of beat up. But he was, the greatest soccer player of all time. And so you've got these moments here where. These aren't necessarily the greatest people of all time, but they are certainly in this really great moment. Whether it's a guy laying on a bench or it's a guy selling magazines, you've captured moments in time, right?
Yeah. So that genre is called street photography, right? And so I like to do a lot of travel, and I like to walk a lot of cities and stuff like that. So I've seen some really interesting moments. And now most people would just walk by and not even notice it, but I see that stuff like crazy just comes at me. And I call it the moment of emotional impact. When you see something happening in someone's life, you know, it could be funny or it could be ironic or it could just be an interesting situation. I did a bunch of photos in Toronto, everybody on their cell phone. It's like the cell phone generation, people walking around texting and running into people.
Sure.
So that was a whole, little section on, people on their cell phones. And so I like to capture those moments on the street, whether it be a homeless person or whether it be somebody riding a bicycle and texting on their phone while they're riding a bicycle, or I see that stuff, and I happen to always have the camera with me, and so I've captured some great moments, and people like to look at that type of photography. They find it entertaining.
Well, it's entertaining, but it draws you in, and there's such a story there where, you look at a picture, for example, the guy in the magazine store, he's got the magazine stand, and you're just thinking, what kind of night was it for him? Where's he from? What's his story? And and then you're looking at the covers of the magazine going, oh, look what's going on at the time. And so there's all this beyond story than if you just walk past and catch a glimpse, right? It's when that's captured in that moment. So you've traveled around to do this too. You've been to some really interesting countries and different places. What are some of your, your peaks and your high points in your life of where you've taken pictures?
There's a couple of U.S. cities that are really dear to me, New York and Chicago.
I love Chicago,
are definitely some great places to capture some great street photography. And I traveled a couple of years ago to the Philippines, and
Cool.
I saw some of the most poor people you have ever seen. Like the poverty was unprecedented. But these people are so happy. They are unbelievably happy. And so I got some great photos of these people jumping into this filthy river with sewage and garbage, and they're just loving it because it's 40 degrees out and they're just getting cooled off. To these kids playing in a fountain, they barely have a stitch of clothing on them, and they're all laughing, and it's amazing how happy these people are, and they have next to nothing.
Well, they have this incredible ability to share.
Yeah.
And that's something that we lack here. And I believe the word is Ubuntu, and it's an African word. And it was about, there was this group of children that they were looking at a tree, and there was a contest, and the fastest person could have that fruit. Instead, they all walked together, and they all took the fruit, and they sat in a circle and shared it. And that's very much a Philippine way. It's very much an Afrikaan, most of Africa anyway. They have that Ubuntu, and it's this ability to share, right? And you sharing this photography, sorry if it's a funny segue into it, but your ability to share these moments with people is something too, where you can watch a crowd of people just look at one picture, and they've all got their story of maybe what's going on in that moment.
Yeah, I love to see that stuff. I love to capture it and share it for sure.
Yeah. So what was Spain like? Because I did notice that you went to Spain.
What I really liked about Spain is it's extremely inexpensive to eat in Spain, and the food's fantastic. The wines are great. The people are super friendly, and it's such an old world country. Like I was in Segovia, they have the largest Roman aqueduct that's still intact. And as you're walking through there, you're just thinking, this is crazy. You go to these...
the history.
In Merida, they have they've unearthed a Colosseum that's been buried for centuries, and they found it all of a sudden, right? And you're standing there, you're thinking, people were, fighting for their lives against beasts and animals in this arena.
Yeah.
We're so young here as a country in Canada.
Well, we look at something and go, that's 40 years old, and we think, no, nobody was alive then. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
No way. When you're just doing your Scott downtime, what is it you really like to do the most just for you? You must have some just Scott time.
When it's Scott time and I'm really just unwinding and I'm separating myself from charities and I'm separating myself from my real estate business, I love nothing more than just to have my camera on me, walking in a place I've never been.
Yeah.
Walking in a city I've never been, using public transit in a city I've never been in. Neat. Just sitting there on a bench watching life go by, and just that's what I really like to do.
Well, thank you for taking this moment to sit with me today, Scott. Time flies by with you for sure. Thank you so much, and I appreciate everything you're doing for the community, and keep sharing.
Thanks,
Scott.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you.